Today's exit interview is with Randy Lundstrom. Randy retired about a year and a half ago. He had a long-time career with the company as a project superintendent. He ended his career doing some coaching and development with the company of our production system, Construction Production 2.0. In this, I think you'll hear a lot about the projects he built, the people he built, and then the twilight of his career and how that really kept him engaged, not only making a difference for him, but making a difference for all the people in the company. I will remember Randy and a lot of the jobs he ran as really being kind of buttoned up and neat and tidy. Anytime I went to one of those sites, I generally knew what I was going to be seeing when I saw it. So I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. Randy Lundstrom. All right, Randy. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Spencer, Iowa. I lived there all until I actually came down here to work for Story. I lived and worked in Spencer, Iowa.
Okay.
I had two twin sisters. I have twin sisters who still live in Spencer. Both of them are retired. I always bring up I'm the poor one of the family. Both my brother-in-laws are multi-millionaires. I mean multi-millionaires.
So you're just a singular millionaire then?
I'm just a singular, close to a millionaire. But they both live up there. I lived up there. I worked for a company up there, Spencer Construction Company.
Well, hang on a second. So about your sisters, are they older than you?
No,
or younger?
they're actually 2 years younger than I am. Well, not even, about a year and a half younger than I am. And actually, my mother, this is kind of interesting, lost a set of twin brothers. I would have had twin brothers and twin sisters, but she lost them before birth. So it's kind of unique that there was two sets of twins that could have been there. So
you were the oldest.
I was the oldest.
Okay. And then your mom and dad, so what did they do?
My mom worked at the hospital as a ward clerk for most of the time. My parents divorced when I was 14, and my dad moved away and went to Colorado. He was a contractor. He built houses and small commercial buildings, and I learned kind of quite a bit about construction because he would actually pick me up from school, and I would go clean up the job sites or sweep out the houses that he was building or do some things like that. Actually, when he left, I was working on a shingling crew. I was actually shingling roofs with two other guys at 14 years old. He would pick me. If I wasn't in sports, I didn't have to. My dad was quite an athlete. He lettered in 3 sports and actually had the pole vault record in Spencer, Iowa for 25 years. Wow. And he was in football and track and then basketball. So
were you in sports?
I was. When I was 13 years old, I fell out of a tree and busted my arm pretty bad. And then after I just got the cast off and like this, I got into a little argument with a kid, and the kid fell on top of me, and I busted it again, my left arm. And they found out that unfortunately, I had a hole in my upper arm in the bone. But the second time I busted it, actually bone chips fell into that area. Otherwise, I had to go to Iowa City, and they were going to take bone chips out of my hip and put them in my arm. But when they found out that I had chips already there from the second break, they grew back and so on. So I kind of missed sports. Other than track, I did do track. But I couldn't do football and I couldn't do basketball because of that arm.
Sure.
And then I actually got into track a little bit and cross country. And then I got into a bowling league with 4 of my buddies, and we got pretty good. We actually went to state a number of years, and with us four, and we never won it, but we.
So do you still bowl?
No, I haven't bowled for a lot of years. I would like.
That's a good thing to do in retirement.
Yeah, you know, things have changed. The bowling alleys aren't there like they used to be. You know what I mean? There used to be a bowling alley in every town, and you know, they used to have full leagues, and now, I mean, leagues aren't that popular anymore, not as much. I used to bowl with my father-in-law, and actually we won the city tournament a couple years in a row.
Huh.
Yeah. So,
Oh, darn.
yeah, it's kind of interesting. He got a 300 in league. This is back 40 years ago when alleys weren't the way they are now. But he actually bowled a 300 in league.
Wow.
So,
I bet that was a late night.
Yeah, that was yeah. You know, back then you didn't see 300s that often.
Sure.
So. Anyway, getting back to my mom, when my dad left, of course, my mom and us girls were the two twins. We both all went to work. I actually went to work at 14, working for a gift shop on Main Street at 25 cents an hour. And first month I worked there, I broke over $100 worth of stuff, unpacking it and doing things.
I was going to say, did you fall on it?
No, you just unpacking it, and you just slip and break it, it'd
Sure.
fall. And I'm talking about back then it was expensive china and stuff
Snow
like that.
globes?
Yeah, and he come down, I was unpacking one day, he says, I'm going to tell you what, he says, the next thing you break, you're going to pay for half of it. And I never broke another thing, never broke another thing working for him. And I probably worked for him another 6 months.
Huh.
So I worked for the DNR up at Okoboji up on Gull Point. I worked for them one summer.
Okay.
That was fun. Mowing grass and cleaning the beaches. The beaches were fun to clean at 16, 17 years old.
I bet.
And then, of course, I went on to college.
Yeah, so you graduated high school,
Yep.
and I was reviewing some of your stuff. I did not know you went to Mankato State.
I actually went to Iowa Lakes Community College for 2 years.
Okay.
And then I went on to Mankato State. The credits that you had at Iowa State all would go up to Mankato.
Okay.
I looked at Iowa State and Iowa, but you'd lose about a third of your credits. But Mankato would take all your credits. So I went up to Mankato State. And a lot of us did. In fact, a lot of the kids that two-year program up there at Iowa Lakes, I probably 20, 25 of us went up to Mankato State. So it was kind of fun because a lot of the guys I knew back then were up there. So.
Sure. And what did you study in college?
I actually was I graduated with a teaching degree in biology, chemistry, and I had a math minor. So I was going to look at teaching.
Okay.
And when I graduated, back then, that was in 72, there was a lot of teachers looking for jobs, and the money wasn't worth much at that time. I actually worked for a guy, his name C.W. Paulson. They had a construction company, and I worked for them while I was in college in the summertime. And I'd go on the road, and we would build elevator scales for truck scales, or we even did a couple of railroad scales, and we'd go on the road. And he had his 3 boys working for me, and me. That's 4 of us, and the old man. That was our crew. Those 3 guys, and me. And I used to take a beating from those 3 brothers. I mean, I got treated pretty bad, but Carl would always, he'd always stick up for me. And he taught me a lot about work and respect, and I'd always have to sleep with him. The brothers, we'd all get 3. I think we'd get 3 rooms, and I always had to sleep with Carl. And he was a snorer. He was a big man. In the winter, this is no shit. In the wintertime, he would not wear a coat and sleeveless. I mean, in this kind of weather, sleeveless shirt. Smoked Picayune cigarettes. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Picayune.
I never have.
They're cigarettes from Louisiana and down that way. And he always had, when we drive all over the state, and he'd always have that. And every time the car would go by, he'd always He'd always say hello, you know. And this is a good one. I wasn't even 21 when I was working for him because I was going to college. And every time we got off work, we'd go find a bar, and we'd always have 2 or 3 beers, then go to eat. He'd always pay for your food, and then we'd go to the motel and go to bed because it was about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So we'd go to this bar, and we'd all sit down, and what do you want? He said, what do you guys want? And he'd say, what kind of beer you want, Randy? And I'd say whatever it was. I don't remember what it was. And the guy would always say, is he old enough? Oh, yeah, he's old enough. No, he worked all day today. He gets to get it. And, you know, back then they didn't even ask for IDs. He said, oh, yeah, he's old enough. Don't worry about it. So I'd always get a beer, you know, and we'd go out and we would have a meal. Well, it was funny Monday morning when we took off because we'd be out all week. His wife, you'd get there about 6 o'clock in the morning because we'd always head out about 7. And she made a 5-6 course breakfast. I mean, it was huge. And you always get invited in and you'd eat with them, and it was a spread. And so you always ate with, Monday mornings you got a big breakfast, then he would always pay for it. And he didn't care what you got. Whatever you wanted to eat, you could. If you wanted a steak, get a steak. So but he was quite a guy. Hardworking, and those brothers, oh my God, they get into each other. And, just some of the shit they do to each other, you know, just fun stuff. But I always had to clean we used to use handset pans for that. I always had to clean all the pans. You know, they're metal-faced pans. Yeah. I always had to clean them, run through the cleaner, and, you know, they had a machine that you'd run through and oil them, and I always had to do all that. But it was fun. So there was a construction company in Spencer called Spencer Construction, and they were heavy construction, which I didn't know much about. But, I mean, they built water and wastewater plants. That's what they were building about half the plants in Iowa at that time. In fact, Story basically pretty much put them out of business in a way. It was a company-owned firm owned by 2 guys, Bill Renzick and Gary Parrish. And so I went to work for them. And the first day I went to work, I met a gentleman by the name of Lyle Kretzinger, who was in charge of production. And we went, he took me over, and we started doing some work over in Hartley, Iowa, not Everly. At a water treatment plant. And Lyle and I are still, he's probably, I would consider my real father as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
He taught me about everything I know about construction at that time, or how to live your life right. And I was going the other direction until I met him, and he kind of put me on the straight and narrow. So I was telling you, I talked to him here last Sunday and see how he's doing. He's 90 years old. He's 20 years older than I am. And he's still going full blast. So
that's awesome.
But I worked for them for 14 years.
And what did you do? Were you?
Well, I actually, in 6 months from working for them, I became a superintendent in 6 months.
Okay.
I was the youngest superintendent they ever had. But I was building water and wastewater plants. Delcora. I mean, I could bring up a lot of them. You don't want to hear all of them, but I built quite a few plants. And
outside of Iowa, or all?
2 of them were outside Iowa. One was a wastewater plant up in Madison, South Dakota, and then a rural water plant up just outside of Vermillion.
Okay.
So those are the 2 we were out at. I was outside of. Otherwise, they were in Iowa.
And so was that something where you travel to the job during the week and then come home, to Spencer on the weekends?
When I built, pretty much. When I built the one in Vermillion, or outside of Vermillion, I got married to my first wife, Kathy, and we figured it out one time. We moved 10 times in 12 years to different jobs.
Oh, be darn.
The company would pay for our travel, moving expenses, and pay for our renting the place, paid all the utilities. All we had to do is move. So we did move 10 times in 12 years. So
And was Kathy from Spencer?
She was from Spencer, yes.
Okay.
She was a Spencer girl. So we were married 25 years.
How'd you meet her?
I saw her one
Was
time.
that after you were on the straight and narrow, or when you were going sideways?
I was still running pretty hot and heavy then.
Okay.
I saw her in a bar. It was kind of a show bar back then. They had a lot of nice bands come in, and it was kind of a show place. I mean, I'm talking about some bigger bands, some of the bands back then. And I saw her in there, and then I said, she's kind of interesting. And then about a week later, me and a friend were going into the theater waiting in line, and she cut in front of me with a girl that was in front of me, and then she just cut in and said, "I'm sorry, can I?" I said, "You sure can." And I started talking to her in the line, and as we were going in the theater, and then kind of asked her if she'd like to go out, and that's how we met.
Oh, darn.
Yeah.
We'll come back to family a little bit later. We'll stay on the work track. So, how did the transition go from Spencer Construction to Story?
That's quite a story. Spencer Construction, the two owners were looking to retire. And so I hate to say this, they were kind of pulling their money out, trying to get, and so they weren't putting that much money back into it. And so our equipment and some of the things that we probably should have got better things weren't happening. And I could kind of see what was going on as it was happening. And then the one owner's son was going to take over. And unfortunately, I knew who that was, and he wasn't going to get the job done. I mean, he was not qualified to be in charge of running a company. And so at that time, I moved into the office and was helping him bid stuff and kind of working kind of in Lyle. Lyle and four other people had, left the company and started their own company, which was a little bit lighter construction company, not doing water and wastewater, but
Sure.
Lighter commercial stuff. So they brought me in to try to keep it going. And at that time, Doyle Hayes, who was a crane operator for Spencer Construction, one of my crane operators that actually I had on jobs a number of times, went to work for Story Construction. One of the superintendents that we had with us went over to Story, and then he brought Doyle over later, and a couple other guys that had been with Spencer came over to Story. And Doyle, at that time, Story Construction was looking for superintendents because they were expanding, they were getting bigger, doing more jobs, and were looking for somebody, more people to run jobs. Yep. And they weren't able to bring them up through the company fast enough. So Doyle says, well, I used to have a superintendent at Spencer Construction that you might be interested in. So Larry Sperlich at that time called me and said, would you be interested in going to work for us? Well, I could see what was happening to Spencer Construction, and it wasn't going to be long. So I said, sure, I'd be interested. So we talked on the phone, and we made a deal. And so I got hired, and I never will forget the day that Larry brought up the company pickup. I was living outside of Spencer, a little town called Fostoria, between Spencer and the lakes, and I owned a house up there. He drove up with this pickup, and his wife followed him on a motorcycle. She was driving the motorcycle, he was driving the pickup.
Don is a gamer.
Yeah,
he's totally
and so,
a gamer.
Of course, at that time, I had my first daughter was Abby. She was 4 years old, and she was out front playing, and he met her, and he pretty much fell in love with her, and they've been friends ever since.
Sure.
And so I went to work for them at Altoona. We were building a wastewater plant, a big plant at that time.
And what year was this?
That would have been in 70. No, that was in 86. Excuse me, it was in 86. And September 15th, I think, is when I got hired. I think within that next week, I was down there working. So that's kind of interesting that Larry came up, and of course he went on up to the lakes and spent the weekend up there, and
Sure.
enjoyed it. But so I came down and came to work for Story at Altoona as a kind of assistant superintendent under Jim Sodders. Jim was running that job at that time.
Yeah, that's a lot of how we bring people in. We sort of pair them up with somebody to learn the ropes, learn our people a little bit, and then send them out on their own.
And then Jim, we were about 60% done with the job. Jim says, well, I got to go up we got another job. That was Ames Wastewater, I believe he went up to. He says, you can run this now. He says, you're qualified. So I finished that job. And so then that's how I basically got into the company.
Sure.
So.
And then you had a long career of running a lot of significant treatment plant work. What are some of the
I figured it out. I was looking some time ago. I says, in my lifetime, in my career with Story and Spencer, I built 13 wastewater plants, major projects, and 13 water plants, which is unused. 26 plants I built in the 44 years I worked construction. So for Spencer Construction, it was kind of interesting. I built Decorah wastewater, Charter Oak wastewater, Nashua, where the little brown church is at. I built their wastewater plant. Like I say, I built two of them out in South Dakota. I helped build the one Iowa Great Lakes sanitary sewage treatment plant, which was a big job at that time. I helped build that. Towns. I can't remember all the towns I worked with. Story Construction, I can't even. Winterset water treatment. Help me out here.
I know you were in Boone.
I built
City waste treatment plant.
I built the water treatment in Boone.
Huxley.
We don't talk about Huxley.
Yeah, okay. That's fine. Mason
Altoona,
City.
Mason City, a couple times. Fort Dodge,
Yep.
a couple times. Colfax.
So as you think back through some of those jobs, who are some of the people that you built through building those jobs? Who are some of the people that you raised up, coached up, invested in?
When I came in from Spencer, I brought a couple guys with me, which is Mike Klein, Denny Johansson, Rick Sipple came over with us. Don Johnson actually came over. You probably don't remember him, but he was a superintendent for Spencer Construction and came and worked for Story for a couple of years.
I don't remember him.
He built a water plant. I'm trying to think where he was at, but he stayed around for a couple of years, and then he retired, I think, pretty much. But I always worked with Danny and Mike. I've worked with them for, God, I'd hate to say, 30-some years.
Sure.
I worked with those guys, and both Mike and Danny became superintendents. Rick Sipple could have been a superintendent if he wanted to be, I think. Never seemed to wanted to, or maybe he just didn't feel qualified. But I
Great
thought
crane operator.
Yeah, he could have ran jobs.
Sure.
How
about some young people in the company or people that maybe didn't come but maybe started here that you helped to provide some experiences for?
Oh, well, you got vice president here of operations.
Him. But who else?
That was Dave. He worked in estimating. What's his Flemmer? Dave Flemmer. Cleveland. Yep. Both were engineers for me. God, I'm getting old.
Well, so let's transition. So you were superintendent for a number of years, ran a lot of industrial work. Occasionally, you would run a building job. If
I only did one building job. That was an interesting story if you want to hear it.
Please.
I was in between jobs, kind of. And I don't know if I was in the office here or where I was at, but Pat comes up to me and he says, and that's the way he put it. I always thought this was kind of funny. He said, I got a small project I'd like to have you do for me. And I said, well, what is it? I mean, if I just figured it was a remodel or something,
Sure.
water or wastewater. I said, well, I got a building that we got to build. Yeah, he said, it's a steel building, metal building kind of thing. And I said, well, I've never built one, Pat. I said, I know nothing about that kind of stuff. I said, why would you even ask? Well, he says, you might be interested. And he says, it's 8 acres under one roof. He says, 360,000 foot warehouse. Jesus, Pat, I says, I know nothing about that. I says, it's a lot easier than water and wastewater. He
Sure.
says, and we'll put some good people with you. He says, well, we'll get it built. And that was the addition over here at
Yep.
Ball Jar at that time.
Yep.
And it was fun. What was interesting about it is, I got to be honest with you, not knowing anything about it, with metal building, I probably spent more time learning and trying to figure out how to do that. And we actually got it built on time, or I think even a little ahead of time, and made some money on it. Fortunately, I had Jim Rogers there, and he was the best we ever had in. I figure, I always thought in metal building,
Right.
and a number of other guys that I had with me, and so it was a fun project. But that's really the only building I ever built.
Sure.
I mean, I worked out the research park on a few little
I
things out
remember
there.
a couple of TIs. Out
Yeah,
there.
some things out there, but that was a fun building to build.
So you didn't know what you were doing, so you weren't bound by past projects and past thinking. Was that helpful?
Yeah, I think so. Jim Rogers, I think sometimes was stifled a little bit about building metal buildings because of how we always built them. And he said, why can't we prefab, like, for instance, a section of roof, and I'm talking quite an area, and then just pick it up and put it in place. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. Have we ever done that before? No, I said, but I think we can do it. And I said, well, let's do it. And he came up with some of those things, and it worked out well. And so I mean, I really was quite ignorant on how things, and he had some ideas that he wanted to try, and maybe he wouldn't have been able to try it somewhere else. Maybe it was somebody else, but he did, and he came up with some really some great ideas, and we had, like I say, we had a good crew there.
Sure.
That was fun. We had good subcontractors. I never will forget the first floor we started to pour. We got about, and that was a big floor. I don't remember. We probably in 100 yards. We probably halfway through it, and I don't remember if it was me or somebody realized that something wasn't quite right. Something wasn't going right. It just it didn't look right. And we got out the instrument, and we found out that they were pouring too high. So they had to basically rip out in a matter of hours because it was going to set up on us.
Sure.
Rip out about 50 yards of floor, which started out, I mean, that just started out bad. Looked bad, as far as the owner and the engineer and everything, but thank God we got it out. And but after that, it went smooth. So,
Sure.
Well, I've worked with another thing I want to kind of bring up. I've worked with some good subs. I'm not going to go through them, but and some good engineers. Back then, in water and wastewater, we had 3 or 4 good engineering firms. V&K, Green Engineering was the one I worked with a lot.
Sure.
Mark Dubin, I worked with Mark Dubin with Green Engineering 3 or 4 times on water and wastewater, and we became good friends. And he would actually let me do things that maybe today you wouldn't be able to do.
Sure.
I mean, for instance, RX Water Stop, I don't know if this is something that most people don't, but RX Water Stop was coming out and being used, but it wasn't popular yet. And I've asked Mark if we could try that on the water plant at Winterset. And that was a lot of concrete there. That was thousands of yards of concrete. Those were 30-foot walls, 2-foot thick, deep in the ground, a 1-million-gallon reservoir tank that was big. And we used RX there. And when we got finished doing the water tests on the tanks everywhere, we had one leak on that whole project as far as all the tanks that had to be tested and so on and so forth. So RX was something, and it saved a lot of time and money for us using that system. And now it's used a lot.
Yep.
So
I know you worked a lot with McClure.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, worked with them a lot.
Yeah.
And they're good people too.
Yeah. Well, we can't do it alone, right? We need great design partners. We need great subcontractors and suppliers, and we need great.
Yeah, we've had some good. In water and wastewater, I had some good subcontractors that you would work with over and over again. You know what I mean? And you became
a small community.
Yeah, you became used to each other, and you knew what they could do and couldn't do. And it was interesting. We would help each other out. I mean, if they needed some help with something, we would help them, and it just, I kind of evened out. That was I always thought was pretty interesting. Instead of saying, I'm going to write a work order for you, you just kind of keep it off to the side, and we just figure it out and get it done.
Yep.
Things have changed now. It's not the same as it was back then. And I got to be honest with you, back in the 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, that was fun. Water and wastewater was fun. It was enjoyable. I always enjoyed being in the field. I did try being a project manager for a couple of years. Pat brought me in when we were expanding. You remember when we did that big expansion? They brought me in. Sodders in and a couple other people. I don't remember who else was in. Donnie, yeah. And I did not enjoy that at all. In fact, I asked Pat, I said, I'm not making any money here. I'm not making a cent. I said, all I do is answer the phone and put out fires. I said, I'd rather go back in the field, and I can make you some money out there. So he did. He let me go back out, and I enjoyed that. But I did not enjoy being a project manager.
Right.
And I don't think Jim Sodders did either.
I don't think so.
Jerry Long was another one that came in from the field.
Yep.
Now, Jerry has enjoyed it, but I just never got into it that much.
That was part of that. So, toward the end of your career, you took a different role and participated in the company in a different way. So, talk about why you did that and how that went.
Pat brought me in the office one day and he says, we need to have somebody oversee basically, I would say the heavy end of it, I would say. Not that I didn't get involved, but he says we need somebody to oversee the heavy part of our work and just go out and help them and look things over and see what's going on out there. You be my eyes, basically. You go out and see what's going on and see if we've got problems somewhere or help them out if you see something that you can help them out with. Try to help them with scheduling a little, try to get them back, doing some better scheduling and some better figuring and thinking. And
so trying to leverage your experience across
my experience,
people and jobs.
And I knew all the guys. I mean, one thing I think probably helped me is, and I don't mean it, I'm not bragging, but I always had kind of the respect that I knew what I was talking about when I was telling them things. And we had some young it was Denny Johansson, some of those guys, if I said something, they would listen to me and we would talk about it. I mean, they called me the sheriff, and I hate to be called that, but that's what here comes the sheriff, Well,
So were you Andy Griffith or Barney Fife?
no, I was
Andy
probably more
Griffith.
Andy Griffith. I never was really, I don't think I ever had to get harsh with anybody. It was more, let's just talk it over and let's see what we can do here and figure it out. So I did that for quite a while. Then I would report back to Pat and say, I think we need some help here, or more manpower there, or we need this or that. I think the guys out in the field, the superintendents, the foremans, I was kind of their mouthpiece for them. If they had some issues, instead of just going to Pat themselves, it was easier for me to go through, and maybe I could get things done better, faster, or maybe easier than it was for them to call in and complain.
Yep.
And so I did that for a couple of years. And that was fun. I enjoyed that because I got to see, what was neat is I got to see all the projects and watch them build. I'd go out maybe every week if I could and spend some hours with them. So you got to see, and when you go out every week, when you go back the next week, you kind of expect to see something that you think should be done.
Right.
And if it wasn't, why wasn't it? I'd say, what's going on here? What's going on? Or if they were ahead of what I thought of, I'd compliment and say, what'd you do that different that I would have done? Because I could kind of see where I would have been compared to what you were doing. So I was kind of the eyes and ears for, I would say, the company, or for Pat at least, because Pat was in charge of operations. I mean, I'm not saying that he wasn't out there, but he had other duties that wouldn't warrant him to be out like I was out there. So, and I enjoyed that. That was fun. That was a fun. A lot of hours on the road. That was the bad thing about it is you spent half the time driving compared to being on the project itself. So
then we started our company lean journey, our construction production 2.0.
Right.
So that really took a lot of the things that you were seeing and then gave it a platform to help teams plan and execute.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting because I was in the ground floor for 2.0.
Yep.
And I think that was good. I think me being in the field, being able to work with you and Pat and the other people that were involved with starting 2.0, and Mike Caston. I knew Mike from 20 years ago, I guess, when he was doing some of the things that we were trying to do earlier.
Yep.
And went to some of the what do you want to call them,
The institute.
institutes. I
Week-long
was at a
training
couple of those. And,
institutes. Yep.
So I got to know Mike then and got to know him better. And now me and Mike are very close. In fact, I told you, I talk to him usually about every other week. And when he comes here, he usually calls me and we get together and have drinks and meal and talk and have a good time.
So yeah, in the final years of your career, you were a 2.0 coach for many of the folks on our sites and in the company participating that way in a full-time way, and then you ramped it back to a couple of days a week.
Yes, when I started to retire that was, I'll be honest with you, that probably was about as much work in my lifetime that I've ever had. As far as, I would say, not as much fun, probably a little more stress. It's unbelievable, but I actually took that home and worried about it more than I did my jobs, because I always felt pretty confident on my water and wastewater stuff.
Sure.
I mean, we had problems, but I mean, I didn't get restless nights or sit up thinking, Jesus, this was a day that didn't go well or something like that. So
Sure.
I would say that probably the last 6-7 years did I do that?
Yep.
Was probably the most stressful and probably not as much enjoyment as I had throughout my other career, the rest of my career.
Yeah, it's a challenge, not just doing the bricks and sticks or the concrete and the rebar. That has its own challenge, but then trying to impact that work through people is...
I would say this, my work out in the field, I had control, pretty much complete control of what was going on, pretty much. I did not have control of CP 2.0. You know what I mean? You had to delegate the control to other people. And you always think that it's going to be easy to do. It's not easy to change. It's not easy to change behavior and change people's attitudes and the way that they do things for some people 30 years.
Yeah.
So it was a challenge, and it was a challenge. Let's put it that way. When I retired, people say, well, "What do you miss?" And I don't look back 30, 40 years ago. I look back the last 6 years. You don't go back farther. I said, I don't miss the work or the travel, but I miss the guys. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the people. I still do. I miss talking to people and that camaraderie, I guess.
Right.
There was a lot of travel early on with CP 2.0. I mean, it was just trying to get things going the way we wanted to do it. And I worked a lot with Mike Caston on that. I mean, and Mike was a pusher. I mean, he had his vision and always thought it was going to go. And it did sometimes it didn't.
So when did you put a pin in it and officially retire?
I always thought 70. I always thought to myself, I don't want to work past 70. You know, I actually thought 68, and then of course CP 2.0 I was involved in it, and I wanted to stay with it, so I stayed in it until I was 70. I think I was still in pretty good health. I'm still in good health. I still want to do some things that outside of work.
Right.
So
was it about a year and a half ago?
Yeah, it was August of.
August of 2019.
I don't remember. It was the first of September or something like that.
Yeah.
I lost my wife to cancer back. I'm trying to think. I was trying to think about how long it's been. It's been 16, 17 years ago, and then married my second wife, Jill. We've been married now, I think, 5 years. She grew up. Her dad built pickup campers. They were called Texans, and they still are building them up in Waterloo. In fact, Jill's brother is still building them, and so she was used to campers, and they had her dad had RVs, and they had Airstream, and she always liked that Airstream. So she always said, when you retire, let's buy an Airstream and go do things. And I was always, but she talked me into it. So here, August, I think, we bought an Airstream and been out traveling with that during the week since then.
So you and Jill enjoy doing that. What else do you guys enjoy doing in your retirement?
Our family, we get to see both my daughters a lot.
Yeah, so where are they and what are they doing?
Katie is my youngest, and she lives in Urbandale, and she works for an engineering firm down there called Grit, I think it's called, who do prototype hydraulic cylinders, pressure relief valves, and things like that. They're an engineering firm, and she is in charge of kind of like what Lisa does here. She takes care of all the buying. She purchases the parts, does everything, pretty much does everything for 23 engineers that work there.
Sure. So is she the boss?
Excuse me?
She's essentially the boss then?
I wouldn't call her the boss, but she's in charge. I mean, yeah, she runs the show.
Yeah.
She runs it. I mean, the company's owned by, I think, a German firm, and when they come over, she's in charge of whining, dining, getting everything the way it should be
Sure.
for them. And she enjoys that. And she really gets a kick out of that part of it too. So she's single. She's 32 years old. And then my oldest daughter works for a pharmaceutical company up in Charles City, and she lives in Waverly. And she is they both graduated supply chain management from Iowa State. Both of them did. And she's in charge of purchasing and inventory for them. In fact, she just got a promotion in charge of now, when they're working on COVID right now, some of the,
Sure.
and she's been in charge of some of that. Got a promotion, which was pretty nice. So she's married and we've got 2 grandchildren.
How old are they?
Lauren is 6 and Landon is 4. So, and then my son-in-law works, he's in the military. He's a helicopter pilot for the National Guard and also a subcontractor for the Army. So he's got 2 jobs. He is right now in New Mexico under quarantine. They're going over to Kosovo. This will be his 3rd deployment. He was in Afghanistan and Iraq. So he'll be over there for about 11 months. So this is his 3rd deployment. This will be his last deployment over there.
So we'll wind it down. You've seen a lot. You've done a lot. You've experienced a lot. You've seen a lot of people in this industry. What pearls of wisdom, what words of encouragement would you have for young people that are or people early in their career to pay attention to?
Well, I was brought up through the ranks differently than we're doing it now. I believe, I like to tell young people, especially people that maybe don't have, I hate to say it, college education, but maybe have some, for instance, junior college or tech skills. Construction is fun if you let it be fun for you, and you can make money in construction. I mean, if there's money, I mean, you can make a good living in construction if you just give it a chance. I believe, to be honest with you, I worked for 2 of the best companies in Iowa, which was Spencer Construction in their prime back in the 70s
Right.
and early 80s. And I think Story is probably the best out there right now. I still believe that, not just in Iowa, but in the Midwest. And I believe that young people don't give companies a chance. If they see the dollars, somebody offers them a little more money somewhere else, they'll leave. They have a tendency to leave. But I think I only had 2 jobs in my whole career. I mean, that's all I had, and I've never been unemployed, and I've never been laid off or my whole lifetime. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I don't know if I've got a real words for wisdom that I can really tell people other than just give construction a chance. And there's a lot. I mean, things have changed so much compared to when I started out. I mean, the equipment that we're using today, the computer, I mean, everything has changed. I remember, we didn't have what we have today.
Right.
And it's so much easier today. You don't get that dirty anymore. I mean, the equipment and the tools we're using today are so much better, and things can get done so much easier and faster.
And safer.
And safer, yeah, safer. So I don't know if I can tell you any more than that. Yeah. I had a good life. I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I started out back in '72, I mean, it was hard. When you got home, you were tired. You had a couple beers and you went to bed. I mean, it was that way because you had to get going again.
Yeah.
But I've been very fortunate. I was very happy throughout my career. I can't say that I ever had a time that I would ever say, why am I doing this? Or why, I don't want to go to work.
Yeah.
I always wanted to go to work. Every day I wanted to go back. I wanted to go to work. But I just hope people can, I don't know if there's a lot of people that can actually say that they can say that it was fun all the way through.
Well, your path from biology teacher with a math minor to construction is it's non-traditional.
Right.
But there's a lot of people that get into this industry in a non-traditional way, and give it a shot.
Yep.
Give it a try. You can always go back to be a biology teacher, but
and I'm glad I never did.
Yeah.
I would hate to be a teacher today, seriously. But no, it's been fun, and I'll tell you the truth, retirement's been fun so far. But I think number one, you have to have good health. If your health's not good, it can be tough.
Yeah, crapper.
Yeah, it can be a crapper. But well, you gotta have a reason to get up in the morning. Now, do I get bored sometimes? Sure. I mean, there's days that today there's not much I can do outside. But
this is going to be the highlight of your day, right? This isn't the boring part right here.
Yeah, this is going to be it. I'm done for the day now.
Yeah, there you go. You can go home and take a nap.
You got to have hobbies. I think you have to have a reason to get up and get going. I enjoy building. I do a lot of barnwood birdhouses and furniture and things like that. I love being out in the yard gardening. I like doing that kind of stuff. Traveling, like I say, this is fun traveling in the summer and the fall and spring. So we're comfortable and we enjoy our retirement.
Awesome. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
There you have it, straight from Randy's mouth about his career and his views of how the industry has developed in probably some good and not as good ways from when he started to when it concluded. I can say from putting eyes on Randy during this, retirement's treated him really, really well. I think many of the folks that we've had in this chair have found retirement to be joyful. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody more joyful in this chair than Randy. It's really cool. When he comes around to occasionally chat people up in the office, when his voice kind of bellows through the halls, people show up. It's a little bit of a Pied Piper effect. It could be because that usually means it's happy hour, but mostly it means that Randy's here and he's got a story or two to tell. So with that, we'll look forward to seeing you next time.